Improvement requires growth and change. And growth requires taking risks and making mistakes. That's the part we don't like. Making mistakes, failing, looking stupid, risking being judged. We want improvement without all that ugly stuff, but you can't have one without the other. So if we do something, we're trying to improve at something, but we're always trying to do it perfectly, we're never going to get better at it. We have to get a little bit messy. We have to do things a little bit ugly in order to push ourselves. So if you're learning how to walk and you never fall on your face, it's going to take you a long, long time, right? But if you want to learn how to walk, you have to be willing to fall on your face. You have to be willing to fuck up. That's part of it. There's that pain that's part of progress, right? So if we're making mistakes, it means we're actually pushing ourselves. And that's something that can be really hard for a lot of us to accept, is that those mistakes aren't a sign of failure, like big capital F failure, but little failures are okay. And they're a sign that we're growing, right? It's okay to make mistakes. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. It's just part of that growing process. So pain will be involved in this process, and don't fool yourself. But think of it this way. There's the pain of growing versus the pain of keeping things the way they are. And there is pain involved in that. If we keep things the way they are and we feel unhappy because we're not changing, we're not growing, we're not improving, we have to be willing to accept that pain. May as well go with the pain of actually improving, right? Either way, you're going to experience pain. May as well get better at stuff. So Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. So being thought foolish and stupid, or risking that, is part of improvement. It's part of that. We need to accept that people might judge us. We might look like an idiot. That's totally fine. That is part of that growth towards self-improvement. The problem with all this, of course, is people do avoid taking risks because of that fear of looking stupid, that fear of making mistakes, that fear of being judged. So it's other people's opinions that hold us back, or often it's our perception of other people's opinions. They might not even have those opinions about us. They might not even care. They might not even be paying attention. Most of the time, people are so wrapped up in their own lives that they don't give us much thought, other than how that affects them. And if someone is actually judging you, think of it this way: they're probably very unhappy and they're probably feeling stuck. And you wanting to take a risk and improve yourself, if they attack you for that, if they judge you for that, it's probably a sign that they're not happy in their own life. So it's more a reflection of them than anything about you. Often that's what it is. So ultimately, if we never take risks, then, we're taking a risk of never improving, of never getting better at stuff, and never getting that increase in confidence and well-being that comes out of that process. So ultimately, self-improvement requires facing and accepting the discomfort of looking stupid and making mistakes. That's part of it. You can't get around it. If you want to improve, you have to be willing to look stupid, look foolish, and make mistakes. But the big benefit here is that if we're willing to take those risks and willing to feel foolish at times, we will get better at stuff. We will challenge ourselves. We will improve. We can self-actualize. And as part of that process, that fear will no longer control us. We might never get rid of that fear completely, but it won't stop us from living our best life anymore. The objections that come up in our minds, the things that stop us, are things like, I will be judged. And maybe you will, maybe you won't, but does it really matter? Are you willing to let other people's judgment hold you back from doing what you need to do to be happy? Other thoughts, I will fail. Yeah, you might, but when we fail, we learn a better way. It's like, well, that way didn't work. And that's valuable information. And now I'm going to try a different way. And you may fail 1,000 times before you find the one way that actually works, but you've learned something in the process and you've gotten stronger and tougher as part of that journey. And then there's the other part. Well, maybe I don't have the skills, I don't have the knowledge, or I'm not brave enough or tough enough or strong enough. And yeah, maybe that's true. All of us, if we're starting something new, we're starting from zero. We don't have the skills, we don't have the knowledge, but that's why you need to start. You need to do the thing. You need to start that journey in order to develop the skills and gain the knowledge. And then by doing that, you will start to feel more confident and you will build toughness as you stick to that path, challenging as it is to, fail again and again, to make those mistakes and all of that, you will get stronger, you will build resilience, you will get tougher, and you will get better at it. So my personal experience, I've faced this again and again in my life, but particularly in the last 7 years. So I'm 48. When I was 41, I started martial arts. It was the most terrifying thing. Well, not the most terrifying, but pretty freaking terrifying to start martial arts in my 40s, because I thought, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be laughed at, or I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to be bad at this. People are going to think I'm foolish. And I hesitated in starting because I had that fear, right? Because it was something totally new. I'd never been in sports, never been athletic in my life. I grew up hating PE in school. Like, I was active with my family, skiing and hiking, but I wasn't particularly fit. And I certainly wasn't competitive in a sports context. So this was really scary for me to start martial arts. But I knew it was something I had to do. And I knew that that fear, that was an important part of the process, was facing that fear. I knew there was something about that I had to take that risk of looking stupid, feeling foolish, making mistakes. I had to take the risk of martial arts maybe being a really horrible choice for me at age 41. Who knows, right? I didn't know, but I had to take that risk so that that fear didn't have control over me and over my life. I didn't want that fear to stop me. And as soon as I started, that fear dissipated. It's like, oh, well, it was just nerves because it was something new. And what you find if you're worried about starting martial arts, for example, maybe you're going through this, you think, oh, they're going to judge me, I'm going to look stupid. The thing is, when you enter that environment, you quickly realize that, there might be the odd person that's a jerk, but most of them are going to be really supportive because you're doing something that they love. When I used to run outside all the time, 6 or 7 days a week. I remember when I started a walk jog program. I wasn't comfortable running. It was awkward. It felt uncomfortable. I was sore and tired all the time. And it took a lot of work, and it took a lot of, risking looking stupid. And I did think that at first, like, running outside, people are going to judge me. All the seasoned runners are going to look at me and think, oh, look at that newbie. But once I got out there, I realized, well, no one's actually paying me any attention. They're driving past, they're running past. Anyone running or walking or riding a bike, they might wave at me. That was it. And now when I look out and I see someone running and maybe it looks like, okay, they're not super fit, maybe they're new at it, maybe their technique, their gait, etc. is a little awkward, I think, oh wow, they're new at this. Good for them. Good for them for taking that risk in feeling foolish. Because I remember that feeling of, oh, everyone's watching, and honestly, no one really is. But I see those people now and I think, good for you for doing that. I remember that starting, and I love running. And so I think, good for you for joining that club, for doing something that I love too. So I think that fear that, oh, I'm going to be judged when I join this group is usually unfounded, because you're doing something that these people love. So they're probably going to be your biggest supporters. So that's what I found with starting martial arts in my 40s. The other part of that is becoming an athlete when I'd never been athletic in my life, never really sports oriented. And I surprised myself by being maybe a bit of a natural at martial arts. I don't want to toot my own horn, but things kind of came easy to me. I learned quickly. Maybe it was because I was super excited about it. I don't know. I had been working out a lot before starting karate, so I was in good shape. But, karate is very different from, running or lifting weights or whatever else I was doing. So it was a totally new exercise for me. And I did feel physically awkward and sore and tired, and I had to learn new skills. But becoming an athlete, that surprised me and that scared me, right? And performing in front of a crowd, that was terrifying at first. So when I started karate, within, I think it was a week after my kids and I started, I found out that there was going to be a tournament in a couple of months. And I was terrified at the thought of competing. And it would have been in kata and weapons kata, never performed in my life, never competed in a sports setting, never been athletic. And the thought of signing up for this tournament scared the shit out of me. And so I knew I had to do it. I knew, because I was afraid, that fear was a big sign to me. I have to sign up for this tournament, because I knew eventually I would be competing, And if I waited until I was a black belt, for instance, the expectations would be so much higher Everyone would expect so much more of me. So right now, as a beginner, as a white belt, this is the best time to start, and face that fear of competing. It's the best time to start doing tournaments because I don't know what I'm doing. No one expects anything of me. So I can fuck up. I can make as many mistakes as I want and no one will care. And that was such a good experience for me to push myself and do that first tournament. And I actually performed really, really well. And I was in, 2 divisions with colored belts. So I was a white belt and I was with, I think, orange, blue, and green belts. And I got gold in one division. The other one, I got bronze. Everyone who watched it said, Sabrina, you should have got gold, but you fucked up right at the end. I did. I made a mistake right at the end. And I may have gotten gold if I hadn't made that mistake. So, first tournament ever, like I faced my fear and I performed really well. And then I realized, wow, it's about that fear. It's like when that fear comes up, we need to face it, not to get rid of it, because the fear will keep coming up, but it won't be as strong. It won't have that hold on us when we actually do the thing despite fear. So, and another big thing for me was starting my online journey with the karate shrimp. When I started, I had no idea how to build a website. I had to learn. I had no idea how to start a blog. I had no idea how to make YouTube videos. I had to learn all of that. And it scared the shit out of me because not only was I new at all of those things, but I was going to be talking about martial arts and mindset and all this stuff. And I only had a brown belt. I didn't have a black belt. So I thought, okay, I've only been in martial arts for, I think it was 3 years at the time when I started. So that was 2020 when I started the karate shrimp. Brown belt, who the hell is going to take me seriously? So I really had that imposter syndrome, that fear of being judged, that fear of making mistakes because I didn't know what I was doing online, and like I was comfortable with writing, but I'd never done it in a blog format. I was comfortable, again, writing scripts, but not comfortable on camera. And I'd made a few videos on my own. I have these really dorky hunting videos. They're on my personal YouTube channel and they're really fun to make. It was just me talking to my phone out in the woods with a gun. And I discovered that I really loved making videos, but it was just me and my phone. I wasn't talking to an audience. It was just for me. But the thought of putting stuff out there for an audience, and particularly a martial arts audience, because much as, many of the people in martial arts are awesome, there is a lot of ego. There is that hierarchy. There is a lot of judgment online. And me being a brown belt, me being, only starting martial arts in my 40s, whereas a lot of people have started when they're young. So I'm not experienced, I don't have the rank. And me also being a woman, which is really tricky online because I definitely got a lot of judgment being a woman in martial arts and being a woman in martial arts online and only a brown belt. So this was a big fear for me, but then I realized, what, I just got to do it. And then what I found when I started is all of my fears were unfounded because no one was watching, like in the beginning, maybe there was a handful of people, Facebook friends or whoever who watched my videos, but no one was watching. I was anonymous. And that was actually incredibly liberating, realizing just like that runner, that new runner outside, the new person, jogging, they've never done it before, they're worrying that everyone is watching them. No one really is paying attention in the beginning. No one really is. I think people start paying attention the bigger you get, the better you get at stuff. Then people start really paying attention to you once you've made a name for yourself. But in the beginning, when you're new at stuff, no one gives a shit. They're so wrapped up in their own world. So that was really liberating for me with the karate shrimp, realizing no one really is watching. And it's funny, even now with I've grown a lot over the last few weeks on Instagram and Facebook and on YouTube too, not as much on YouTube, but I have grown quite a bit, my audience. And I had someone say to me the other day, something about, you have this sizable audience. And I keep forgetting that actually, I still feel anonymous online because, I still have that mindset from the very beginning of okay, am I good enough at this? There's still that little voice in my head that I might be judged. I feel like an imposter at times, right? So and I feel but remembering that very first video I uploaded and having, very few views on it and how liberating that was too. So there is this safety there too of, well, no one is watching. I worry they judge me, but no one really is watching. But anyway, rambling on, bit of a tangent. But that was my experience, that once I put myself out there, that fear got a lot less. You know, it hasn't completely gone away. It does still come up at times, but I've learned that I can take action even if I'm afraid, even if I'm nervous, even if I'm worrying about being judged or making mistakes. I wouldn't have improved so much as a content creator, as a video creator. I wouldn't have improved as much as I have as a martial artist if I hadn't taken those risks, if I didn't take those risks of, risking looking stupid, risking being judged, risking feeling like a fool. So this is how I've grown as much as I have on my journey. And I can see that. I can look back and see the growth because I took those risks, and I made a fuck of a lot of mistakes along the way. That's a big part of it, right? I've made mistakes in martial arts. I've made mistakes in videos and blogging and technical stuff. But every time I make a mistake, that's useful information. And I take that and I go, okay, I got to do it a different way. And I learn from it. And then a year or so ago, I started my podcast, the Karate Shrimp podcast. And I hesitated for a really long time in starting that. I was really nervous about it. I think almost more nervous than starting YouTube. I don't know why I had this fear around it. But then I realized, okay, I'm afraid, so I have to do it. And what's interesting is I very quickly lost that fear within, I don't know, a couple of days of setting up my podcast, going through all the, picking out my podcast host and doing all that stuff. And then recording my first 2 episodes, I think I released that first week. I stopped feeling afraid, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't such a big deal. And the interesting thing with podcasting is you do feel a lot more anonymous than YouTube, because you don't get that same feedback and criticism and trolling that you do with YouTube. But now I'm at a point where it's like I hadn't released a podcast episode. This is my first one in a few months. And I think I was kind of losing my passion for it and losing my passion for making that type of video, because I would make the video and then use the audio for the podcast. And it's a very different type of video for that than my other videos. And I wasn't really into it. And I realized, maybe me starting the podcast, it was about facing that fear. And I don't really know, did I really want to start a podcast, or was it that I was afraid to do it, so I had to do it? So now I'm, still working through that and trying to figure that out. But I am back to podcasting now, yay. But it is important to me when I have that fear come up, I have to face it. Even if it's something, a path that I'm not going to continue on, even if I don't continue podcasting, maybe I will. I don't know. But the fear of starting a podcast was something I did not want that to be a thought in my head. I did not want that fear to take up any real estate in my mind. So I had to face it. I had to do the thing anyway. So here I am. So you can face your fears and do those things even when you're afraid, right? The fear might never go away, but you will get stronger and braver and more resilient. And the thing with this process of me facing the fear of starting karate, facing the fear of starting a blog and a podcast and a YouTube channel is this transfers to other scenarios in my life. So I don't feel as afraid. The fear might come up, but it's not as big. It's not overwhelming. It doesn't stop me anymore. And I don't really care anymore about other people's opinions. And if it's like valid criticism or valid feedback, yes, I pay attention to that stuff. But if someone just has an opinion on something I'm doing, it doesn't really hold any weight in my life. And it doesn't stop me from carving out my path the way I want to carve that path, right? Whereas before starting karate, I think I really held back on a lot of different things over a number of years, worrying about other people's opinions. And I'd get important people in my life would constantly be giving me their opinion on stuff and try to kind of shape me and manipulate me into living a certain way based on what they wanted, their needs, their values, their opinions. And I was starting karate, I felt kind of liberated from all that, where I didn't need other people's opinions to shape me or define me anymore, or I wasn't willing to let other people's opinions dictate how I was going to live my life. And the more I practice this, and this is a skill that we do need to practice, right? In the beginning, I didn't have really strong skill set there. With practice of just putting myself out there, taking risks, doing things that people might disagree with. And I do get a lot of opinions on what I'm doing, various videos I've made or different paths I've taken, people's opinions, I'm aware of it, but I don't let it stop me. I don't let it change the course of, where I'm going with all this. So it doesn't matter so much. I know that no matter what I do, people are going to have opinions on it. But ultimately, I have to live my life the way I want to live it, right? So this does become a transferable skill. Maybe you want to start martial arts and you're scared. If you take that risk and push yourself and try it, even if it's not something, maybe you'll discover that you're not really into martial arts, and that's a reality. That's a possibility, right? And no judgment there. Maybe it's just not your thing. You face that fear and you took the risk of starting, and then maybe you discover, hey, I don't really want to continue this, but I'm no longer afraid to start martial arts. You've now gotten that fear under control and you're going to feel better. Even if you don't continue on that path, you think, okay, it's not for me, but that fear of starting that new thing is not going to hold me back anymore. It'll get easier to start other new things. Maybe then you want to start, I don't know, CrossFit or whatever it is. It's going to be so much easier to start that because you can say, oh, look, well, I started karate or jujitsu or whatever it is. It wasn't my thing, but I faced my fear. I faced my fear, and that's the important thing. I risked looking stupid. I risked being judged. And I also risked starting something that might not be for me, because that's something else that can hold us back, is thinking, well, what if I don't like it? Or what if it's not for me? What if it's not going to be my thing? Well, you're not going to know unless you try it. And there's no harm in starting something and then stopping. There's no harm in that. Like this idea that, oh, you can't be a quitter, or if you change your mind, you're a fuck up, you're a failure. That's bullshit. So if I stop podcasting, or even if I stop blogging, if I stop karate and decide to do a different martial art or something else entirely, I'm not a failure because of it. I just changed my mind. I just looked at all the information and said, you know what, my heart is not in this anymore. I'm going to do this instead. Isn't that smart? Isn't that smart to, shift direction rather than stay on the same path forever, even though you're miserable? Like I used to be like that with university. I'd get on a path of I'm going to be a math teacher, and then, oh no, I'm going to be in English. And then I would stick to that. I'd make a decision, stick with it for a really long time, even though my heart wasn't in it anymore. And I think I don't think it was a waste, my time in university, but coming out of all of that, I realized, okay, it almost was like procrastinating for me. Like I just stayed on this path, even though it wasn't the right fit for me, even though there were all these signs that I should do something different, right? But then at the same time, maybe we need to fuck up like that and be on the wrong path for a while and feel that discomfort of, no, this isn't the right thing for me, and start to feel like a little bit unhappy, a little bit dissatisfied, a little bit miserable to push ourselves to try something new. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe we need to feel stuck to feel inspired to get unstuck, right? So there's that possibility too. But I do find in my life, the bigger the risk that I take, and risking looking stupid, the more I improve, right? The more I improve, and you will too. So what you can do is, if this is something that's holding you back, I think the first step is to bring awareness to this, that you do have this fear, that you are worried about being judged. You are worried about taking risks, making mistakes, and feeling foolish. You need that awareness. Otherwise, you're just going to be living your life on autopilot, not really knowing why you're doing the things you're doing. Like, why, I have this interest in karate, but I'm not going to start. And you talk yourself out of it, like, oh, well, I'm too busy, or I'm too, whatever. Maybe it's just fear. And if you can bring your awareness to that, oh no, the reason I'm hesitating and starting karate is because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of looking stupid or whatever. Then you can, okay, now you can take action, right? Now you can face that and say, well, is this fear even founded, right? Is this reasonable? But if you're in denial and you don't have that awareness, you might convince yourself of all these sorts of reasons why you're not trying karate. Oh no, I'm too busy. I don't have the money. I don't have this. And some of those might be valid, but maybe it's just a whole bunch of excuses, right? So awareness first. And then what you want to do is visualize the outcome if you do take the risk. So if you do risk looking stupid and you try karate for the first time, what could that look like? Like, think about how awesome that could be. Visualize that. You want to see that. And then at the same time, you also want to visualize the outcome if you don't take the risk. So if you keep things the way they are, what are you losing? Because you're losing something, right? And then you've got that pain of feeling stuck, that pain of feeling like, I can't get off my butt and challenge myself. I'm kind of a wimp. I feel kind of weak. I feel kind of like, meh in my life, right? There is that. So you want to see both. You want to see what you could gain and then what you're losing by not taking that risk. And then you want to really feel that dissonance, that gap between what you want and what you're actually doing. Where you want to be and where you are now, that feeling there, that really uncomfortable feeling, you really want to feel that. That's going to motivate you. That's going to inspire you. That's going to get you moving. And then what you have to do, of course, is take action even if you don't feel ready. And tips with this, make it a super small action, really small, really easy, something that, is so easy that it would be dumb to not take that action. Like you want to start karate, just drive to the dojo. You don't even have to walk in, just drive there. Just to overcome that obstacle of like, oh, I can't do it. Oh, I'll look stupid. Just drive there. Or, check out their website, or, if you're not ready to call them yet, like go online and find their schedule and print it off, and then like pencil in, the class times in your day timer, just sort of mentally get started doing this. Just try little things, little small actions to get started. And the action, it can be imperfect. It's much better to take imperfect action. It's much better to make mistakes, to fuck up, than to sit on your ass and do nothing, to try and make it perfect. And that becomes this all or nothing thing where you end up doing nothing, right? So take imperfect action. Try your first class. Just say, hey, I just want to try a karate class. I just want to see if I like it. And yeah, you're gonna maybe look stupid on those mats because you don't know what you're doing, maybe. Or you're just going to look like a beginner who's never done it because you've never done it, right? We don't know what we're doing if we've never done it before. If you start at zero, you have no skills, you have no knowledge, you have no experience. So why are we putting this pressure on ourselves to be perfect at it, to be good at it, if we've never done it before, if it's a new thing, right? So we can take action even if it's imperfect, and we can perfect it along the way through repetition, but start off with imperfect action. And then after all of this, what you want to do is analyze the results. Did it work? Did you improve? Did you get better at stuff? Did that fear go away or shrink down to something manageable? And it can be really helpful to track this, to track your progress, to keep a record over time so you can look back and see how far you've come, which will also remind you of how far you're capable of going, right? So I have, all my videos on YouTube, and I've never deleted a video. I don't think so. Once it's been up on YouTube, I haven't deleted it. So I can go back and see my really shitty videos in the beginning. And this is this really cool timeline for me of how I've gotten better at stuff, how I've gotten more comfortable on camera. I can see all the little issues I've had with audio or video or whatever, lighting along the way. Like this video, I've got sunlight shining on my face, so this is something that I can look back and go, okay, well, I should film at a different time of day or whatever, and I can improve because I've made those mistakes. But it's really cool to track your progress like that. It's really cool to see those mistakes that, you might cringe when you see those mistakes, but then you look at how far you've come because of those mistakes, right? So then you can look back and, with tracking your progress, you can see all the fuck ups. You can see all the fuck ups and how they actually helped you. They actually helped you. And then it gets easier to make mistakes. It gets easier to risk failure again and again in the future. Making changes like this can feel like masochism in a way, like you're doing it because you hate yourself. And maybe, that is the case. Like you're starting off, let's say you want to lose a lot of weight and you hate your body. And I hope you don't hate your body, but let's say you do. I've been there where I hated my body and I wanted to make changes. And so you start this intense training plan and strict diet, and it can feel like more hatred, like you're punishing yourself, right? You got to like beat yourself into submission, get yourself to the body that you want, right? It does feel like this punishment and this self-hatred, but I'd ask you to flip the script and think, well, you're making this change, no matter how difficult or scary or challenging it is, you're making this change because you want to start loving yourself. You're no longer okay with accepting things the way they are. You're no longer okay with the pain of complacency. So you're going to start loving yourself. You're going to start this process of facing fear and working through it, even when you're afraid, even when people might judge you, even though you will make mistakes, you will fuck up. You do risk looking stupid, but you're going to grow so much more. And you're going to love yourself so much more because of this process.